victims were seeing this and they were reaching out. At one point, it was like almost daily that I was getting connected to a victim who said, I have my video on him. I was abused as a child on and whistleblowers, like I said, coming forward, and it began to just build and build. And as the petition started to grow, it became newsworthy, right?
Hmm.
Like, oh, people were like, what? Hub has this problem? Like, it's infested with rape videos. And so hundreds of media articles started to be written about it. And it culminated in a New York Times piece that was a huge moment for all of this when Nick Kristof of the New York Times, he did a 6-month investigation and he was talking to many of the victims that were coming forward, and he released the children of and he ended the article with the words, with we have Jeffrey Epstein times 1,000. Um,
Damn.
yeah, and it sent shockwaves around the world. The parliament in Canada was up in arms. They were demanding a criminal investigation. Justin Trudeau was making a statement on TV. The credit cards felt the pressure because we had taken Fabian's advice and we were going after the credit cards to try to get them to cut off. Um,
And so, can you
but
unpack the
yeah.
importance of that role? Because people may not understand, you know, as a conceptual idea, if you're trying to make money, you have to have a payment processing mechanism. So I want to underscore
Yeah.
and highlight the role that those credit card companies actually played.
Yes. So, you always hear the phrase follow the money.
Yep.
And I mean, in this case, it couldn't be more true. They can handle bad press, but they can't handle getting cut off by the credit card companies. Like, I mean, they can, I mean, they'll figure out a way. They have figured out a way to survive, right? But it was the worst nightmare for them to think that they would lose the credit card companies, because when you're an online business, like there's really not a very profitable online business if you cannot process credit card transactions,
Yep.
because not enough people today use crypto. Like crypto is just not very widespread as far as people using it. And so the idea that the credit card companies would cut them off would be something that they would consider debilitating. And, that is something, we understood. But then again, confirmed by the former owner who says the only thing they care about is the credit card companies. And so that's why we felt like it was so important. But also, when you think about trafficking, and especially like corporate facilitated trafficking, when we think about this, it's not just that you have to hold a company accountable, because, traffickers have enablers, right?
Mhm.
Like corporations that are engaged in this kind of activity, they don't just do that on their own, right? They have enablers, and those enablers allow them to exist and flourish in our world. So for that would be like the search engines, right, that are helping drive traffic to the site. It would be the hosting companies. It would be the financial institutions, the hedge funds that are funding them. It would be the credit card companies that are processing all their payments. And so we understood that we have to look at this, we kind of zoom back, and it's not just the company, it's the ecosystem of that company and who's enabling them. And target number one was the credit card companies. It's also advertisers, right? So
Mhm.
we had to go after the advertisers as well. And today they've lost all mainstream advertisers. Like KY Jelly, Weed Maps, and Astroglide will not advertise on anymore.
Hmm.
That's how much of a pariah they have become. And but that's why we went after the card companies. And thankfully, after resistance and resistance and resistance, finally, with this New York Times piece, they actually made the decision to cut off. And that was actually thanks to also the pressure of Bill Ackman. So Bill Ackman's a billionaire, activist investor, hedge fund manager who just had a passion for this issue when he read it. He has daughters of his own. He happened to know the CEO of MasterCard, so he got involved
It
and made some
helps when you
phone
can,
calls.
maybe dial somebody in your personal Rolodex.
Yeah, that was definitely, that was like a moment where I was going, is this real? Like,
Yeah.
how is this happening, But it was, and they cut off Visa, MasterCard, and Discover joined PayPal in cutting off at the end of December 2020.
They all did it at the
However,
same time.
so PayPal had done it at the beginning of the year,
Yep.
and they followed suit then at the end. And And so back to why they were so important and how much power they have over these companies, like because that happened, was in its executives were in such a panic that they decided to do the unthinkable. And they decided that the only thing they could do to try to woo them back was to delete the content, all the unverified content. So they took down over 10 million videos and over 30 million images in 24 hours.
Oh, really? So that was that
Yeah.
easy for them to find it. So shocking.
Boom.
Wow.
Just like that.
Huh.
Gone. It was just,
What a crock of
yeah, in a
shit.
moment.
We have all these people and we verify this stuff, and then in 24 hours we're going to identify all this content and delete it. What a sack of shit.
Yeah, well, I mean, you talk about an admission, right?
Yeah.
Talk about an admission that your site is infested with videos of real sexual crime when you have to, and the reason why I say it's the worst thing that they could have done is because the business model of free user generated depends on massive amounts of content. Like content is king. Like that's what the insiders said. They said content is king. They have to have inventory because they have to have URLs. They have to have that picked up in Google to drive traffic to the site. And if they don't have that, they don't have traffic and they can't sell ads, which is how they make most of their money.
Yeah.
So it really was the worst thing that they can do. And there you go, instantly. Now, however, 2 weeks later, I found this out probably 8 months, 9 months later, that 2 weeks after all of that went down at the end of 2020, the credit card companies quietly snuck back to advertising arm.
Why
Which
does
is
it
how they were
always
making
have to be
most of their
about
money.
money? Yeah, it's just they're making a small scrape on the transaction. Why does it always have to be about money?
Well, they were making probably a little bit more than that because when it was a high risk transaction, so these are all high risk transactions, so they can charge more
Oh, for their
than a normal
processing fee. Yeah.
transaction. Yes, so they were making, significantly more per transaction on these than they were on just say, products on Amazon.
None of that is
Um,
accidental. There's not a single portion
mhm.
of that. I mean, especially if I know nothing about the internal workings of a credit card company. So I'll use Visa as one I'm familiar with. I feel like that there is somebody in Visa that uses Microsoft Excel and keeps track of revenue funds and, or streams like, hey, this one's really high. And also, by the way, we're charging more per transaction on this one. And look at how much we're making. I feel like it is impossible for that to have existed without it being known. And probably the politest way to say it would be ignored by those in power.
Mhm. Yeah. Yes, it was. But when it was even brought to their attention, they resisted, right? They resisted doing, and when we think about the law, so it's not just that it's like the morally correct thing to do, not to monetize child abuse and trafficking. It's actually illegal to knowingly benefit from a sex trafficking venture
As it
in the
should be.
United States.
Yeah, as it should be. It
Yes.
should be
So
globally.
right. Well, at least in the US, our
Yeah.
law is that you cannot knowingly benefit from a trafficking venture. And so I don't think, many people kind of connect these dots. But so the reason why I started the hashtag trafficking hub is because according to international and domestic definition of trafficking, any monetized or commercialized, I would say commercialized instance of a sex act of a child, so a child that's involved in a sex act that's commercialized, or if it's induced by force, fraud, or coercion of an adult and it's commercialized, that's the key here, right? It's
Mhm.
like becomes trafficking when there's an exchange of something of value. And because every single video on is highly monetized. Free is not free. It is highly monetized in so many different ways, primarily by selling ads on the videos. But they become instances of trafficking. So all the trafficking statutes apply to what was going on. And with Visa, it was, listen, you need to stop this, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because if you don't, you're going to be in big trouble,
Yeah.
actually, legally, which they are. So, Serena, who was one of the victims, she was underage. She was a young teen when her abuse was uploaded to downloaded, uploaded, millions of views, sending her on a spiral of trauma. She would beg to get the videos down. She'd be hassled to prove that she was a victim, prove that she was underage, which is crazy because, they're not asking for that kind of proof to upload a video. But, she ended up dropping out of school, getting bullied. She got addicted to drugs to numb the pain. She tried to kill herself multiple times and then wound up homeless, living out of a car. But Serena is suing the literal hell out of its owners, its executives, the hedge funds, and she's suing Visa. And
Currently.
Visa, yes.
Awesome.
And Visa lost its motion to dismiss the case.
Yes.
So this. So they went back, right? They snuck back. Now, fast forward to August of 2022. And in this meantime, I'm desperately trying to get them to stop. I'm going back and just saying, listen, how could you go back? Here's more proof. Here's more evidence, getting Bill Ackman involved again. On and on. They're resisting again. Finally, August 2022, they lose their motion to dismiss the case in a scathing decision by Judge Cormac Carney in California on Serena's case. And he said, of many other things, he said, Visa gave the very tool through which to complete the crime of knowingly benefiting from child trafficking. So that was the words of the judge. And Bill, just jumped right in that moment. And he got us on CNBC Squawk Box. He got Serena's attorney on CNBC Squawk Box the day before. And we just called out the CEO, Al Kelly. And, I just remember just looking in that interview, it was like on Zoom. And I looked in and I imagined I was looking in his eyes and I just said, and Al Kelly needs to stop. Like how could you be doing this? Bill had a powerful, words about how wrong and illegal all of this was. And so then finally, more headlines. And then Al Kelly does something kind of unprecedented. He makes a personal statement saying finally Visa is going to withdraw its services from, and they've continued to have to take down content. So today has been forced to take down 91% of the entire website.
Whoa.
And they have went from 56 million pieces of content to 5.2 million pieces of content.
That's still
today.
A tremendous amount.
Yeah, but we're not done.
Yeah.
But still, that's where we're at. So they have, faced a reckoning. CEO and COO were forced to resign. And they've been criminally charged by the Eastern District of New York. They were criminally charged for knowingly profiting from sex trafficking of a particular subset of victims, like 100 victims in California who are victims of trafficking.